So what's funny was I was going to be doing an install video for the Speski barrier, as you can see, which is just going to go right up in there. But I don't know if you could tell in the background, but there's a whole lot of storming going on, and yeah, I don't think it's going to work out just the way I'd hoped. Sorry about that. So today we're just going to go ahead and slap one of the Speski barriers onto the LX right now. We have my little brother Jason over there, who's going to be doing the install, and I'm going to be doing the narrating because I'm too lazy and too big to get in there and do this thing. So I'm going to let him do all of this installation. So I'll do the narrating, he'll do the install, and we'll just kind of go from there. So right down in here, you're going to see that there are a couple brackets. One's longer than the other. One has 1, 2, and 3 holes. That's the one that's going to be mounting onto the top of the grab handle for the third row, which we actually removed before starting this process. Also, part of this is going to be some of these spacers and those bolts right there. So here we can see that Jason has everything kind of mocked up. On this, you can see that you have the top bracket, which is where the handle used to be. We have the lower bracket, which right now we're just going to let it hang there. We have the bolt through, the short spacer, and on the front we have the other bolt through and then the long spacer. Those are now going to be threaded into the handle area where the rib nuts in the headliner where the old handle used to be, and it's just going to just thread those in just real quick, and then we'll go back later and tighten everything up. But for right now, we kind of want everything loose, just so we can get everything mocked up. All right, so just real quick, just so you can see, the first one is in. The longer bar is kind of hanging there, which is kind of what we want. But the top piece that's there, the screws and the spacers are all in. They're just hand tightened because you're going to want them loose just so we can get everything all tightened up. So now Jason is going to be moving over to this side and getting this side of the handle going. Alright, so Jason's now doing the exact same thing on the passenger side. It's basically the same thing as the other side, just for the passenger side. So the short spacer on the back, the long spacer on the front, the long bracket right behind the top bracket, and he's just going to go ahead and hand thread on those screws. And as you can see, now we have both sides of the brackets held in place, and from here the next part is going to be getting the barrier up and in place. Alright, so next up is we need to install the barrier itself. Now on the barrier you have a front and a back. You'll notice here where the mesh comes in, you actually want the mesh side here to be facing the cargo area, and you want this open area to be on the side that faces the passenger, because the headrests actually want to go back into this. If you have the mesh on the wrong side, then it contacts the headrest sooner. So we're actually going to take this and rotate it around. So now the mesh is towards the cargo area and the open pocket area is towards the seats. So we're just going to go ahead and hand this to Jason, and he's going to start getting everything into place. So now that we're ready to put the barrier up, this is where it's handy to have that extra hand. Perfect. And so now from here we're just going to go ahead and hold it into place, and we have the one screw bolt rather, that goes in on the frame side, and then you're just going to line it up into the bracket. And then there's the other 10mm bolt, or nut rather, that goes onto the back side of it. And then we'll tighten up one side and then come back and do the other side as well. Sorry, the passenger side hardware is on. Now we're getting the driver's side passenger side on. All right, that one's in place. And now we're moving on to the lower bracket. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and mount in the lower bracket. It's just one screw and one nut. We're just going to get that in hand tight, not go nuts. And then once that's good, we're just going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. All right, so now that all of the hardware is in and everything is looking good, we're going to go ahead and go back and tighten up every screw. All right, so when deciding where to actually tighten in the hardware, so Jason here is going to put the relax the barrier and then put it back into position just so you can kind of see where everything goes. So, and then back up again. So what you want to do is you want to get everything to where it's square within that pocket. So we're actually gonna be lifting it up a little bit instead of just letting it mounted and sitting in its relaxed state. So now that he's got a little bit of tension on it and everything looks a little more even, we're just going to go ahead and start tightening the back screw, and then moving forward on tightening the front screw. So on the barrier hardware itself, what you're going to want to do is it's going to want to pivot at the bottom and pivot at the top. What you want is the bottom pivot, the bottom of the barrier, to actually pull towards the second row seat, and then on the top pivot to actually push back towards the cargo area. So now that's done, we can go ahead and tighten up the hardware. And move up to the top. And now the top hardware for the actual barrier itself is getting tightened down. All right, so now all the hardware is in, the barrier is good, hardware is tight. So now we can take the back seats, move them into position, and you now have a barrier. So here we are with the Speski Classic 80 series barrier in place, mounted and ready to go. And so now we have protection from anything and everything that we have mounted into the back of the vehicle that decides it wants to try and murder you.